Studies show watching my channel can disinfect 99.9% of bad writing from your manuscript. Whatever. Roll the intro. God, this stuff tastes so bad. Oh. OnPage Sage. OnPage Sage. Hey everybody, I'm Simeon Cole Fletcher. Welcome back to my channel, OnPage Sage, where we've got the good stuff. That's right. Now that I got your undivided attention. But no, on a serious note, everybody, I hope you're staying healthy out there. Crazy times we live in right now. So, stay inside, stay healthy, social distancing, all of that, and try and reach out where you can. Please stay healthy, guys. All right, let's get to it. Today's video applies to anyone who's stuck at home or wind up having more time on their hands. I've got 7 tips to help you get back into writing. Tip number 1, revisit your inspirations. Whenever I want to come up with or develop a new idea or work with one of my old ones, I think about those things that inspired me in the first place. For you, basically that means think back to whatever it was initially that got you started on this train, got you excited about writing, or maybe just put an idea in your head. That could be a childhood book, that could be a movie, it could be an anime or a show, whatever it was that got you thinking, wow, I have an idea now and I want to put pen to paper, go revisit that. Tip number 2, you ready for a hard truth? Your fingers can't do this if they're too busy doing these. Man, this guy better leave my distractions alone. I'm not taking all of this from some guy who's not even here.
And your book won't be here or my new favorite because you haven't written it yet.
I know, right? Really though, have you noticed how much time can go by when you're not actually investing it in something? For writing, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take you sitting down at the computer with a nice comfy chair and having Google, Microsoft Word, or some other writing program and your notes open at most. And it's just going to take you going for it. And of course, you can't forget your headphones. And that leads us to tip number 3, find your groove. If putting away the distractions is the hard truth of the writing process, then the type of music that you listen to in the background is easily the hack. I mean, the right type of music can have you running through your plot points like, but the wrong music will have you staring at an empty Word doc screaming at your computer. This may vary depending on how good you are at focusing or perhaps your writing style, but for me, I need something smooth with no lyrics going on. It sucks getting to that moment of impactful dialogue, 2 characters needing to communicate something for their character development, and then you have someone whispering and rapping in your ear. I don't know, for me, I just always wind up listening to what they have to say, more than I'm actually writing. Some good suggestions are lo-fi, chill step, classical piano, and classical guitar. To be honest, I kind of listen to different ones depending on if I'm editing or writing or querying or whatever. That's totally up to you. And if you hadn't thought about this before, you can still listen to a lot of your favorite types of music, be it hip hop, pop, trap, whatever, but YouTube the instrumental versions of that stuff, which means you get all the tunes with none of the lyrics. Okay, tip number 4, plan the basics. For that, let's hop on over to the workstation. Okay, go with me on this. Have you ever had a new idea or perhaps a writing prompt scratching at the back of your head, but you really couldn't figure out how to give it legs? If you Googled some of the planning steps that you're supposed to do, like plotting, 3-act structure, a lot of that can be really overwhelming, especially for a new, first time, or just a rusty writer. So to help out today, let's just break apart one of the easier to understand concepts, the 3-act structure. Writer and editor Tim Stout has an article online, and I'll link that below, which basically he takes the 3-act structure and he applies it to very easy to understand comic book panels. And the thing is, I think that we can use that in writing. Typically, the 3-act structure includes the beginning, middle, and end of your story. But honestly, when I was trying to apply that to some of my ideas, I was like, that's really vague. Where do I come up with the beginning of this new world and the middle of it, then the end? I just didn't really understand it until I started doing some research and reading what he had to say. Mr. Stout applies this 3-act structure to comic book panels using Calvin and Hobbes, one of my favorite comics. And basically, he does it like this. Okay, so in writing terms, the original story idea or writing prompt that we would call it is Calvin pretends to be Superman. In panel 1, we see what in the story would be the beginning, or what Mr. Stout calls the context. For your writing idea, this is the context of your scenario. What is the situation that we're writing about? What person, faction, army, nation, heroine, detective is being featured? In panel 2 and 3, this is what we would call the middle, or what Mr. Stout calls goals and conflicts. Think of this as, now that I know the who and the scenario that I'm writing about, what is it that they want to do within the context of my story? In the comic example, the scenario is Calvin wearing a cape and running, but his goal is to fly. Finally, in panel 4, this is what would be the end in the 3-act structure, but Mr. Stout labels this resolution. Here we see what the protagonist's reaction to the conflict is and what they're going to do about it. In the comic strip, Calvin's reaction is to pretend he ran into kryptonite while still staying on the ground and not actually getting up. For your story idea, think about that cool world or situation that you have. Place a person into it and let them loose to explore and interact. Give them a goal or something to go after. Introduce something that gets in the way of that. Maybe the rules of your world, some sort of opposition, some antagonist, some foe. And then, after they've run into that wall, show us what that means for that character, for the world, and for the future. There you go. Shorthand version of the 3-act structure. Next, tip number 5. If you're still stuck, reach out. Look, you may have gotten through all of these steps. You're sitting there like, this isn't making any difference for me. I still don't have anything. Well, you're not some damaged goods writer who's never going to get it right. The problem is you're working in a vacuum. Writing may be a solo activity, but it's definitely not a solo journey. The people who have the greatest times breaking through some of their own walls are people who reach out to others and offer their feedback. Go volunteer and be a beta reader. Go be a critique reader on some online site. And just working with other people's work and trying to help and give them suggestions will grease the wheels for your own project. No, really, it's actually that easy. So, you provide a new perspective on someone's story. You give them a little bit of critique, a little bit of editing, and you sit there and you say, man, I wish that they would have done this different, even though everything else was great. In just thinking about that little piece of different, that different perspective that you would have wanted to see on their work, starts creating original thoughts in your own mind. And you take those and you apply those to whatever story idea or writing prompt that you had, and now you've actually got momentum. Okay, and finally, tip number 6 and 7. There's never been a better time than now, and write towards something. Look, right now, we're pretty much all stuck at home with not enough of this. But when people get bored, what are they going to turn to? Netflix, anime, games, all that good stuff. What do all of those have in common? They're all made of stories, storytelling. Whether you're watching this now with the whole C-19 going on, or you're stuck at home with just more time on your hands in the future, the thing is, people always want stories. Storytelling will always be relevant, and you as a writer can contribute to that. Your product is always in demand. So knowing that, what are you waiting for? I mean, this kind of goes into our 7th tip as well, which is write towards something. There's still online short story competitions happening. Go find one of those events and sit down and actually write towards one of them. It's one thing to have an idea and spend all this time with it and have no place to send it. It's another thing to say, hey, I'm taking this original idea, I'm turning it into 20 pages of content, and I'm going to deliver this to someone on the other end who's actually expecting it. All right, we made it to the end of the list. That's 7 tips on how to get back into writing, especially when you've got a lot more time on your hands. If you want more content like this in the future, analysis, breakdown, even more in-depth than what we did today, please subscribe in the link below and put on those notifications. Anything helps. Also, other places that you can find me on Instagram on on.page.sage, and also go to my website, www.simeoncfnovels.com. That's going to be in the link below. All right, that's all I've got for today. Thank you all for coming. Please stay healthy out there, and I'll see you next time here on OnPage Sage.